some reason, I thought that as I wrote each book, it would get easier, but it doesn't. It gets harder and harder. So when my third book is published, it was such a relief. It was such a surprise because there were times that I didn't know if I was actually going to get through it, that I was going to finish it. So it was this great sense of relief, even more than my first two books. One of the main difficulties was deciding how I would tell this story, because the ship that sank, it was a German ship, but the passengers weren't all German. So I decided that I was going to tell the story from the point of view of different characters. And that became a major stumbling block, having these 4 different characters. So you would think, oh, it was the historical research that was difficult. No, it was actually the way that I chose to tell the story. I think that history holds secrets, and I believe that we can find strength through struggle. I think that there's meaning in hardship. I don't think that we experience something terrible just for the sake of it being terrible. There are lessons there. And so I think if we can go back and learn from the past to create a better future, that's important. And these people that lost their voice, those lessons were within them. And so I'm also looking for the lessons in the meaning in addition to giving them a voice. Salt to the Sea is a story of sadness and loss and pain, but it's also a story of hope and joy and the miraculous nature of the human spirit. Everyone has heard of the Titanic, this ship that sank and 1,500 people lost their lives. But during World War II, there was a ship that sank, and it was carrying over 10,000 people, and 9,000 people perished, including 5,000 children. And the ship sailed during an evacuation near the end of World War II. It was torpedoed by a Soviet submarine. It is the single largest maritime disaster in history. But somehow it's remained hidden from the world. So I created 4 characters who are all hunted and haunted by tragedy and lies and war. And their fates converge as they arrive at the port to board the doomed ship. And to figure out who survives, you have to read the book. I love history because I love learning about different parts of the world and different countries, different people. But the reason that I think it's important is because these times of the past, they were full of difficulties and people who experienced difficulty. And through reading historical fiction, we have a chance to use one of the most powerful tools that we have as human beings, and that's empathy. To read a story and be moved and say, now I know the story and I feel for those people and I can find their country on a map. And I know the history and I know the story. So I think it's a gentle and exciting way to learn these hidden stories of the past. With all of my books, the first step is that I read all of the nonfiction. I read biographies, I read memoirs, books that academics have published, and I go to those first to really give myself a sense of the history. And then I go and I interview people, witnesses, survivors, families of the victims, people who had direct experience with what I'm writing about. And in the case of Salt to the Sea, I did a lot of research with divers, deep sea divers, who, after the ship sank, they went down to explore the ship. And they found things that they did not expect to find. I don't even know what to expect from Ruta Sepetys in the near future. But I'm working on a novel now about a story that I think is really important in history. And it's set during the Franco dictatorship in Madrid in 1958. And I find that a lot of people around the world aren't that familiar with Franco and this dictatorship. And certainly there's no way that an American writer could accurately explain the complexities of this difficult part of history. But what I'm doing is I am opening a door to discover this part of history and allow readers to make a decision for themselves. Aspiring readers and people who are wanting to get published, maybe not ready, read a lot of books. When you're working on something, allow someone else to read it, and then pay attention to rhythm and melody. Do not be afraid to cut. Do not be afraid to throw away a whole chapter. You can save it. You can always come back to it. But I find that the more you cut, the more concise you can be with language, the more powerful it is.